I saw in yellow press in the 90s, you say, you know, this kind of Russian yellow press saying that one of Lenin's ancestors was a witch who was persecuted by the Inquisition in the medieval age. Who is a witch? The one who makes miracles professionally. What if it is from this person that Lenin inherited his strong belief in the miracle? I quote Lenin. There are no miracles in nature or history, but every abrupt turn in history, and this applies to every revolution, presents such a wealth of content, unfolds such unexpected and specific combinations of forms of struggle and alignment of forces of the contestants, that to the lay mind there is much that must appear miraculous. End of quote. Another one. In certain respects, a revolution is a miracle. And another. Revolutions are the locomotives of history, said Marx. Revolutions are the festivals of the oppressed and the exploited. At no other time are the masses of the people in a position to come forward so actively as creators of a new social order as at a time of revolution. At such times, the people are capable of performing miracles if judged by the narrow Philistine scale of gradual progress. End of quote. As one researcher, famous researcher Ronald Moore comments on it, above all, Lenin's overt usage of miracle lays its emphasis on human energy, effort, and enthusiasm. Yet it requires stupendous moments for such miracles to occur, moments that evoke superhuman effort from those who did not know they could do such. Some nice pictures of Lenin as Lenin and miracles. Okay. I paraphrase here Comrade Boer and say that I paraphrase this superhuman effort and say that revolution is a non-human effort, which of course renders the world utterly miraculous. Remember these socialist utopias, for example, the one by Fourier, where we have those anti-animals, like for example, there are whales, predatory mammals or fish, and there are anti-whales. Those are good kind of, another whales who will carry human beings through the oceans, through the waves, for example, or anti-tigers, anti-giraffes. There will be in the future, the rivers will turn, you know, all nature will be changed miraculously in order to be kind to us, as Russian writer Andrei Platonov would say, which is the matter of a communist technology associated with magic. For Boer, the key notion of Lenin's equation of revolution and miracle is the tension between organization and spontaneity, between the so-called party avant-garde and spontaneity of the people, of masses, understood as a substance that historically becomes subject. Organization and spontaneity are the two terms of a dialectical opposition, and what appears miraculous is their synthesis. Focusing specifically on the non-human aspects of revolutionary effort, I will consider these two terms in a very specific shape, as two specific forms of struggles and alignment of forces: witchcraft and solidarity. First part, witchcraft. Why does one become a magician, a witch, or a sorcerer? A little child suddenly wants to become a magician at the moment when the world that was first so loving and immanent ceases to immediately obey all his needs and starts to live a life of its own. When her mom, who was just reading a fairy tale aloud, goes out for work and staying alone in her cradle, so lonely the child helplessly waves her hands without being able to change anything. When it turns out that the world of adults is ruled by a law indifferent towards the desire of the child, when the desire of the child ceases to be the one and the only law for the world of adults. This trauma of the early childhood, a rupture between the world and the subject, gets even deeper due to understanding that something goes wrong, either with the world or with the subject, and everyone has its own way to deal with it. Religion helps to make oneself conform to the world and to place desire under the law. Magic, in contrast, invites to make the world conform one's desire and to place the law under its arbitrary rules. Therefore, our culture knows at least two types of spiritual practices. One child who limits oneself with a dream to meet oneself, a kind magician, becomes religious, establishes a relation of gift with God, and becomes his slave, so that God could fulfill her wishes. Another child who wants to become a magician becomes a magician, establishes a relation of exchange with the devil, and gives him the soul or renders him another service in order to be a master of things and to fulfill her desires herself. Do you hear me? Is it okay, the sound? Because I hear something annoying, but if you can tolerate it, if you cannot... The one becomes a magician who is ready to make an inhuman effort in order to bring the world to conformity with her desires. One becomes a magician out of injury, resentment, weakness, despair, melancholy, envy, jealousy, boredom, to avoid being a Philistine. One becomes a magician who sees that something is fundamentally wrong or that the world is unjust, and who thinks that only a miracle can change this order of things. A magician wants to challenge a reality provided by God and nature. If the native essential injustice of the world, that is, privilege of the rich over the poor, the strong over the weak, the living over the dead, etc., is a law, she wants to violate its law, this law, in order to establish its own. That's why a magician needs some superpower and some skills exceeding the ones of an ordinary man. One has to have enough power and skills to perform a miracle in order to fulfill one's own or someone else's wish. That is, to transgress the law, to interrupt the natural order of things, and to break its inertia. They break what was mentioned as a normal life. Just like revolutionaries, they work both against God and against nature. Where at the limit of the possible, the competence of people is exhausted, the witchcraft starts. there are bugs and holes in being in which witches put their own bodies. The witchcraft is forbidden. The very fact of witches' existence by the very fact of witches' existence, which violates the law, be it natural or social law that allocates place and time for everyone and everything. Therefore, witches are alien. They partly belong to another world to which this law is not applicable. But they also belong to this world, which they try to change, so that they still depend on its law and that they suspend. As Lenin says, yes, revolutionaries do not have respect for the bourgeois law, as they want to abolish this law and to establish a new one instead. If we consider the real world as a unity of things, a witch, while being its part, definitely breaks this unity in a freaky way. On the one hand, she secures this unity as if there were holes in being, and she was filling these holes with her body. On the other, she breaks it, as she is having another world, whose agency she is, or simply nothingness. Therefore, they say that witches do not have a backside. That's why it is so difficult to hunt them. The moment they turn their back to you, they disappear. No one really knows if this is true or not, but the one thing is clear. The body of the witch is neither male nor female, neither animal nor human, but is absolutely queer. She can be any, but the world is always intolerant to her, whatever she is. Between something that is and something that is not, there is nothing. Her body bears within it that active part of the non-being that we call desire. I emphasize a peripheral position of a witch. A witch international would create not a central, but an always peripheral committee. They stay at the border. They are the border themselves between the two worlds, let's say. And I can add that the source of this magic force of the witch is not love, as was proclaimed by, for example, such people as Aleister Crowley, William Reich, and Jesus Christ. But not love, but comradeship. And now I'm moving to that. Another quote from Georges Bataille, my favorite philosopher. He says, the sorcerer's, he says in his very short essay, The Sorcerer's Apprentice. The sorcerer's apprentice, first of all, does not encounter demands that are any different from those he would encounter on the difficult road of art. So the pupil of the sorcerer is basically doing the same job as the artist does. And now I want to refer to my comrade from Что делать, who is not here, but who is one of our sorcerer's pupils, apprentices. It's another part of this paper called Solidarity. Again, Bataille, in his contribution to the critical dictionary entitled Wild Beasts, Georges Bataille defines metamorphosis as a violent need, identical, I quote, with all our animal needs. This need belongs to the animal which all of us bear within. I quote again, there is in every man an animal thus imprisoned like a galley slave, and there is a gate, and if we open the gate, the animal will rush out like the slave finding his way to escape. the man falls dead, and the beast acts as a beast, with no care for the poetic wonder of the dead man. Thus, man is seen as a prison of the bureaucratic aspect. End of quote. How not to complement this statement with another famous quote now from Russian poet Vladimir Mayakovsky, who writes, "I deter like a wolf at bureaucracy." End of quote. Я бы волком выгрыз бюрократизм. There is a beast incompatible with bureaucratic affairs, and a great deal of effort is made to prevent the advent, always unexpected, of this unruly creature. I will introduce the work of this comrade Nikolai Olenikov, whose artistic desire is to find a gate similar to the one mentioned by Bataille, to show how it opens and to let the animals go. Among numerous objects, there is there in a two-room installation in Tito's bunker in the mountains near Sarajevo, there is a canvas in a modest wooden frame with a big courbet-like vagina, from where a realistic brown bull head with the yellow tag in the ear emerges. For example, and some other pieces of art where a lot of transformations and metamorphoses are happening. Oleynikov's animals burst out of human bodies and penetrate them again in an odd manner. But don't be fooled by their appearance. These are not sexual beasts. These are political beasts. Through the gate of metamorphosis, they rush out from our sexualized bodies where they were imprisoned and begin to speak. What do they speak about? Various things. Most often they are telling their stories. Each story is peculiar and necessarily contains some private, intimate element. I wouldn't, however, call these stories personal. Rather, these are impersonal or even unpersonal stories. A person's face is replaced with an animal's head, with a flower, with something or someone else. It is very important to understand that Oleynikov's metamorphoses are not infinite becomings devoid of any sense. They do not partake in a capitalist process of overproduction of differences, of creating novelties and multiplying differences. There is something that, through the whole chain of transformations, remains the same. This something does not have to deal, however, with the inner self or personality or identity of any kind, but only, as Oleynikov says, or not Oleynikov, but his penisier. He has this figure of a person who wakes up suddenly and discovers that he is having a ear instead of his penis. And this year, this person says, claims about the pain of solidarity. This is what remains the same. Solidarity means sharing pain, but one cannot share pain without penetration. Those who share pain interpenetrate. Their mouth, their arms, their ears all become gates. It is the pain of solidarity which makes animals come out and speak. They speak almost like those in fables and fairy tales, miraculously, but this is the materialist miracle of comradeship, solidarity and comradeship. These are the forms of relation of the entities that experience metamorphosis or catastrophic transformations depicted by Oleynikov. Friendship, love, sisterhood, and other nice things could be there too, but these things, as we know them, normally attach us to a singular individual who has name, face, and something which cannot be replaced. A friend or a beloved one is pinned down by their identity. In comradeship, identity vanishes. Think about the Russian Bolsheviks, revolutionaries in the underground. For the sake of conspiracy, they lived faked social lives under different names. They constantly changed their passports, families, or even genders. Comrades are replaceable. They wear false names and false mustaches. This aspect of the masquerade makes politics a theater, but a very special one, like Artaud's theater of cruelty. Here, ancient masks are back as they present a show, a ritual of a direct and instant communication, like a plague, a contagion. The void beyond the mask can be that contagion, or, in our words, sharing of the pain, not symbolically as between sisters, but bodily. Comrade is the one on whose neck you can put your head, to whom you can give one of your hands if she has known at the decisive moment when the enemy attacks. Friendship and love wouldn't sustain such a disturbing act. They are too innocent, too kind for that, too human. Comradeship transcends the borders of humanity towards an impersonal multiplicity where there is no one. What does this no one mean? A structural impossibility for the one to be. A comrade is never alone, not in the trivial sense that there is always someone else around who does not let her feel alone. No, being never alone in a more radical sense means that you are always among others, like, to borrow a Deleuzian definition, a wolf in a pack. I quote Deleuze, you can't be one wolf, you are always 8 or 9, 6 or 7. Not 6 or 7 wolves all by yourself all at once, but one wolf among others with 5 or 6 others. End of quote. A pack is not a gathering of individual beasts taken one by one. The irreducible multiplicity means every animal is a pack among its number. Nonetheless, Deleuze and Guattari do have a place for a lone wolf, the one who runs alongside and at the same time a bit apart from the main pack. He can be the leader of the pack or an outcast. Deleuze and Guattari call such an animal, which exists in every pack, a demon, an exceptional individual or an anomaly. And here the theme of the periphery or the border takes on a specific, special significance. By this picture. Well, the exceptionalness of the individual is determined by its position at the border of the pack. Sorcerers, I quote, have always held their anomalous position at the edge of the fields or woods, at the borderline of the village or between villages, where they enter into secret alliances with various animals and demons. That's why here I have these pictures. At the borders, somewhere at the periphery, where they enter into secret alliances with various animals and demons. One should not forget about sorcery. Metamorphoses that occur at the border of the pack, metamorphoses of certain types of animals into others, into monsters. Witches form unnatural alliances and open the gates out of which crazy animals of the soul run out. When the gate is open, the beast is liberated of being one and joins a shareable collective body that hurts. No one, that is no person is there, but the pain of solidarity, which breaks the continuity of nature for the strangest interspecies alliances. Who or what is in the pack? Who are these hybrid characters penetrated each other and telling their stories? These are folks, Oleynikov replies. I asked him. He said, these are folks, народ. Народ. Deleuze used to say that literature invents a people, but it is a small utopian people that otherwise does not exist. What Oleynikov's art invents is not really people or nation or race, but a motley folk that gathers transgender dancers, bulls, philosophers, horses, cats and dogs, girls, wolves, roses, fingers, spirits and ghosts, vampires, and other kinds of living, dead, and of course undead creatures. Brecht, Lenin, Gramsci, or Hegel rise from their graves and take their parts among this utopian pack of folks, in the name of which beasts speak. Some other pictures. I quote Oleynikov's work. Maybe you won't even believe me, but the story goes like that, says the narrator. But as we see a bull, we tend to believe him, even though he tells us two different stories about one and the same person. We tend to believe that the bull because we know that in contrast to man, animals do not lie. That is why they always speak in fables. If you want a truth to be told, let an animal speak. They always tell the truth. This is one of the lessons of psychoanalysis. Thus, Jacques Lacan suggests that animals do not lie because they do not have language and they do not have an unconscious, which is structured like a language. In a way, this is true, but only when spoken by the animal. But how can it speak as it is, if, as it says, it does not have language and therefore unconscious? For this, I would reply that instead of having an unconscious, animals are unconscious themselves. To put it very bluntly, the unconscious is not some deepest inner self, but an animal or an alien, an other that is both outside and within us, one that already speaks, so to say, before any language. On the one hand, it is the animal that rushes out when you open the gate. On the other, it is what the ancients called the soul, anima. If, according to Bataille, an animal is imprisoned within the animal, in Andrei Platonov, a great Russian writer, on the contrary, a secret human being is imprisoned in every animal body. It suffers and desires, but cannot express its desire and pain because it does not know how to speak or how to cry. There were people everywhere, he says in one of his short stories, only they seemed not to be people. In his novel Soul, Platonov describes a camel that was so sad and seemed a member of humanity, or a small tortoise with the sorrow of an intelligence that was half asleep. The novel actually describes a small nomadic and very poor nation, folk, wandering about the desert in Central Asia. The nation is called Jan, which means soul or dear life. In his other essay, Platonov calls human soul, I quote, an obscene animal. He's talking about a communist who has a beast in his heart and whose soul is free from underwear and boots of decency. Душа свободна от белья и сапогов приличий. It's not the human body that is obscene in its animality, but the soul, a miraculous beast, who starts to howl in his heart joyfully and freely, Platonov says. So Aleynikov's metamorphosis combines these forms. Say an animal imprisoned in Bataille's bureaucratic man rushes out, but it turns out that this animal, thus liberated, is actually Platonov's secret man in disguise. And it is he who now speaks with the animal's mouth. And within this secret man, there is another animal for which yet another gate can be opened, and another deeper secret man that tells its story. And if you think, I quote one of Aleynikov's characters again, and if you think it's deep already here, I've got news for you. It ain't no coal mine deep enough. It ain't no trenches low enough. So we are keeping on falling, comrade, says Aleynikov's Minotaur, who lives in the Second World War bunker. This bunker is inhabited by the Minotaur, is compared with the wartime dorm, catacombs, underground casemates, coal mine, the grave, and the labyrinth. He is not alone there. There are also Theseus, the soldier, and Andromeda, but they all interpenetrate. Another underground character is that man who was either abandoned in the mountains and then adopted by a family of cows by the names of Partisan, Voltaire, and Mother, or was a child of Tito, living all his life in a bunker so nobody saw him. I quote Aleynikov, he was dreaming to find a tunnel that leads to Zurich directly to Cabaret Voltaire, and that he actually found this tunnel, but it led him to Sarajevo instead. End of quote. Bunker or labyrinth could stay as a simple metaphor of the unconscious if it wasn't in addition charged with a strong political meaning of an underground, both a conspiracy of a no-name comrades sharing their pain, a secret conspiracy of a sorcerer's apprentices, and the blind work of the mole of history. Let's say, in contrast to the so-called individual unconscious, which you would discuss with your therapists somewhere for big money, can there be at all some individual unconscious? There is a collective political unconscious where the obscenity of human soul reborn as a utopian desire for a collective, that is the desire for communism. And so you can see that the miracle that happens here is the one of a synthesis of the reason and unconscious of the witchcraft and solidarity, of the spontaneity and organization, which is actually one of the main issues in our Что делать practice. That was some idiotic picture just to lower the pathos of this presentation. I end with this, and now if you have some questions, we can also have this discussion. But this is actually this lecture is a roundabout introduction into the movie that we will see tonight.
I want to kill myself every time I hear Lacan, and especially when we are criticizing individual unconscious and then we quote Lacan, I'm like, the lose is much better. No, but I just wanted to ask you if you can clarify a bit because I see it as a very important point, but the relationship that you mentioned between metamorphosis, pain, and solidarity. I'm not sure that I got those points completely right, so if you can maybe elaborate on that, like pain comes from metamorphosis, and that is the sheer source of solidarity beyond any identity markers. I don't know if you can elaborate a bit on that, because I see this very interesting point in your lecture.
The pain is a force, is a certain force. It's not substantial, so to say. It doesn't have a certain referent among things, right? Any identity does. In this case, identity appears as a mask, like as if we were in theater. The theater metaphor is very useful here. And behind the mask we have this void. But it's not an indeterminate void, but a determinate one. So something happens behind the mask, and this something is a movement, this movement, this is a movement of force, right? The pain of solidarity is not a philosophical concept. This is rather a conceptual metaphor, of course. Even the pain serves as a metaphor here, as a metaphor of this shareable force. Shareable means does not belong, essentially belongs to no one. It's no one's, and in this sense, it is ours. But the ours means not mine and your and someone else's, but ours as non-appropriatable. When it started from these examples, because if we see this metamorphosis, certain parts of the bodies, they appear and disappear, and individuals interchange. They give their parts to their partners, let's say, comrades, and of course this is painful. This is painful if you are tearing apart. That's what more or less is called this pain of solidarity. The whole movement that happens behind the mask, and the mask is a good thing. That is what makes a theater happen. You remember these photos, for example, these pictures of Lenin and Trotsky, where Lenin is wearing this fake. They went to Smolny, and Lenin pretends to have this tooth pain, and he wears this special buns, scarf or something, and Trotsky is also transformed into someone, I don't know, whomever, and of course, and they're sharing pain also appears here. Also, one of my favorite movies is actually To Be or Not to Be by Lubitsch. You know this movie. It's a comedy. It's one of the best comedies ever made in the 40s. In the 40s, about fascism, about Hitler, and the plot of this movie is the following: in Warsaw, a theater is attacked by fascists. Is taken. So Warsaw is taken by fascists in '39, and the troupe of theater actors stays in the city, and they have to play in the theater, and they create this Antifa resistance, but they create it as actors. So they start to really play the theater. They make so they take a uniform, the fascist, the Nazi uniform. So they play in life. They come out of the theater, and they play fascists just to they play their own game with their enemy, who is really, really strong, and they have nothing. They have all they have is fake. After all, they win. This is a fantastic movie. You cannot just yeah, it's great, and there you see how this play with the. That's from where I took these mustaches metaphor, because at a certain moment someone is trying to reveal another person and takes out his mustaches, but then he himself doesn't have a fake ones, etc., etc. Something of this kind. What was wrong about Lacan?
I'm kidding. I'm highly anti-psychoanalysis. I think he's the last bastion of capitalism and individualism.
Psychoanalysis.
Both they ask you a lot of money when you lay on the couch, so when you mention it.
Well, yeah, it happens.
I think that Deleuze did a great explosion of Lacan, so that's where I think we should finally end up. But much better.
I have to explain that my strategy of working with philosophers and theoreticians, and for me Lacan is also a philosopher, because, well, even though one could say he's an anti-philosopher, never mind, all these dead white men are a cultural treasure, what Benjamin would say. They have a lot, and we should use what is useful. That's what we always do. We take the best, we remove the worst. Okay, everything, like every thinker has a bad sides and good sides. We just take the good, and we don't care about the bad things. We reappropriate. Every deep thinker, big figures like Deleuze or Lacan, they worth struggling for them, and we use what can be used in a purpose, so that we engage them in a comradely manner. That's how I work with all the traditional thinkers like Hegel or Aristotle and Plato, even I don't know, whomever can be taken in this, can be transformed into something different.
And sometimes I feel that people really confused, because in the film which we might see later and in your speculation, I think that there is a strong point of critique, because you present some things like witches and zombies as something real, or pretend to be real, but they don't exist. That's a very simple kind of objection. And then people try to really break their heads to understand how we, at the same time, claim to be materialist, Marxist soul, engage with all that kind of fancy, trendy kind of speculation. Of course, everybody understands. Yeah, it's perfect metaphor for proletariat. It's perfect metaphor for revolution. See it from another way. So it's kind of a strange. But sometimes there is a certain danger of the too playful. So sometimes we blame to be too playful with all that kind of heavy vision. That what would you comment on that? I don't know, maybe it's not a question. It's a question for me also,
I would say, because we already had this discussion several times before in different places in the world, what I like this discussion because it's getting more and more precise and refined. Now I would say that any folklore material is important because it gives us a picture of a certain structure. I'm basically what I'm interested in a kind of philosophical anthropology. I explore a certain types. The level of their reality is not that much interesting for me, of their historical, let's say, reality. Better say, they can be real in a different sense. There is a reality, so-called, which is what we call situation or circumstances where we live in material reality, and there is another one which is phantasmatic reality. Phantasmatic reality indicates to the realm of desires and also unconscious desires. Those desires that we would never recognize because they are somehow, we would not like to know about ourselves, a certain something, and we have this censorship, so censored, the realm of unconscious desires. Folklore, a lot of folklore characters such as witches and monsters and zombies, they come from the phantasmatic world. In this sense, they probably do not exist in the sense that we exist, but at the same time, they are structurally very important because they form the way how we construct narratives about our lives. Like we take, props research about the structure of a fairy tale, how we have this figure and how this hero goes through all the processes of initiation. Then he is initiated, and then he struggles with the monster. Then he gets a bride, and then he's a man. And you see how all Hollywood movies are repeating this same millennial structure of a fairy tale, and how we always see one and the same boy just being initiated and becoming a man through saving the world, something like this, something of this kind. That is what that is how our imaginary is constructed, for my purposes, which are for political purposes, phantasma are not of a less importance than the reality that we criticize, because we also are talking about our desires and utopia, and those desires that we would like to share, and those desires we would not like to share with the comrade, and so on. I disappear.